Estimating project time, effort, or cost can feel like guesswork, but it doesn't have to be. In this video, I will walk you through an infographic I created in PowerPoint that explains 12 widely used estimation techniques, from simple expert judgment to advanced methods like Monte Carlo simulation. We will explore each one with a quick explanation and one or two examples, all visually laid out to help you understand and present these concepts better. If you create training decks, project reports, or just want to explain estimation techniques clearly, this is for you. Let's take a closer look. Estimation techniques can be divided into three groups. First is qualitative techniques. These are based on expert opinion or subjective judgments. Second, we have quantitative techniques. These are data-driven or mathematical approaches. When you need precision, we use these techniques. Lastly, we have hybrid or modern techniques. These combine qualitative and quantitative methods to get the best of both worlds. Or they include modern techniques used in Agile methodologies. Let's start with qualitative techniques with expert judgment. Expert judgment leverages experienced individuals' insights to estimate efforts quickly, relying on their past knowledge, but it can be subjective due to personal biases. As an example, a senior developer estimates that building a website login feature will take 3 days based on their similar past work. Another example could be a seasoned chef estimates it will take 3 hours to prepare a wedding cake based on their years of baking experience. Next up, we have analogous estimating. Analogous estimating predicts efforts by comparing projects to similar past projects. So one example is if a 5-page website took 10 days, a similar 10-page site might be estimated at 20 days. Another example could be a construction manager estimates a new office building will take 9 months based on a similar project completed last year in 8 months. Next up, we have Delphi Technique. Delphi Technique gathers anonymous estimates from experts over multiple rounds, refining through discussion to reach a consensus and thus reducing bias, but it typically takes a lot more time. An example is a team of architects anonymously estimate the time to design a building. Then they refine these estimates over, let's say, 3 rounds to agree on a timeline of 12 weeks. Then we have top-down estimating. Top-down estimating starts with an overall project estimate and allocates efforts to tasks offering speed but less accuracy due to its high-level approach. So we start with an overall project estimate, then we break it down and allocate efforts based on different tasks. It is faster but less accurate because it's hard to predict nuances in this type of approach and plan for uncertainties that could occur somewhere down the line. A specific example could be a project manager estimates $100,000 software project and let's say allocates $40,000 to development, $30,000 to testing, and another $30,000 to deployment based on their past project experience. These are ballpark estimates, and of course, as you start working on it, you encounter problems and these estimates could change. It gives you a good starting point to begin with. Next, let's look at quantitative techniques, starting with parametric estimating. Now that we are in the realm of quantitative techniques, our focus is not necessarily coming up with estimates quickly, but coming up with estimates that are as accurate as they can be. So that involves using mathematical models and tools, as we will see next. Parametric estimating uses mathematical models and historical data to predict effort, scaling variables like cost per line of code, hours per square foot, cost per unit. This is ideal for repetitive tasks, but it needs reliable metrics. An example could be a builder estimates $150 per square foot for a 2,000 square foot house. Another example could be if one report takes 2 hours to write and 10 reports are needed. Of course, the estimate is going to be 2 multiplied by 10 to give us 20 hours. It's relatively straightforward, but we do need to quantify our matrix for reliability. Then we have bottom-up estimating. Bottom-up estimating breaks projects into small tasks, estimates each, then sums them, providing high accuracy but requires detailed planning and time. So this is opposite of top-down estimating that we saw here. In this case, we first begin by the smallest tasks. We estimate how long each of those would take, and then we add them all up to arrive at the final estimate. This is a lot more accurate, but depending on how granular you want to be, this can be really time consuming. Couple of examples would be, let's say a software team estimates coding, testing, and deployment tasks that could total up to the entire project effort. Another example could be writing, reviewing, and formatting a document. Let's say writing takes 2 hours, reviewing takes 1 hour, and formatting takes 1.5 hours. So the total bottom-up estimate would be 4.5 hours. Next up, we have function point analysis. Function point analysis is a technique used to estimate the size and complexity of a software system based on what it does from the user's perspective and not how it's built. Instead of estimating by lines of code or hours, it measures functionality delivered, making it more objective and technology independent. Functionality is broken into 5 components. First is external inputs, which is the data entering the system from either the users or other systems. Examples would be login form, data entry screen, or upload button. Then we have external outputs, which is the data leaving the system. Data leaving the system is typically processed or calculated before it's passed on. Example would be a report, invoice generation, confirmation messages. Then we have external inquiries. These are user requests that require a response, but they don't really update the data. Examples would be search features, lookup menus, account balance checks. Fourth is internal logic files. This is the data stored within the system. It is used and maintained internally. Examples would be customer database, inventory records, etc. Fifth component is external interface files. This is the data the system uses but doesn't maintain, as it comes from another system. Examples would be currency rates pulled from an external source or weather information, etc. So based on these 5 components, we get an unadjusted function points, UFP for short, and from that we calculate estimated time, which would be hours per function point multiplied by UFP. So specifically, each of these components is counted and rated by complexity, low, average, or high. Each rating has a numerical weight. All the points are totaled to get unadjusted function point or UFP count. You may also apply a complexity adjustment based on general system characteristics like performance, security, but for basic estimation, UFP is often enough. Once you have the total function points, you can estimate time like this. So multiply average hours per function point based on your historical data or industry standards. For example, if your productivity is 5 hours per function point and your project has 100 function points, the estimated time would be 5 multiplied by 100, which is 500 hours. You can also estimate cost, resources needed, or team size this way. The fourth technique we have under quantitative techniques is Monte Carlo simulation. Monte Carlo simulation runs thousands of scenarios using task duration ranges to estimate effort. So it excels at handling uncertainty, but it requires computational tools. Computational tools required for Monte Carlo simulation can be as simple as, say, Microsoft Excel. So with Excel, you can build simple models. To build complex models and simulations, you would have to use other technologies like the language R, which is used in statistics a lot more. But with R, you can run complex Monte Carlo simulations with customizable distributions. So it suits advanced users for modeling project risks or effort ranges. Then we can use the powerful language Python, which is pretty much industry standard in a lot of areas today, like AI. When it comes to Monte Carlo simulation, Python is used because it's flexible, it facilitates large-scale analysis, but because it's a programming language, it's ideal for developers for estimating software project timelines. One more tool we have is MATLAB. MATLAB is used for precise effort modeling in technical fields. So it provides simulations with robust visualizations for engineering or project tasks. Then there are other software like At Risk by Palisade that's popular for project management, and we have Crystal Ball by Oracle for business projects. One example is a project run 1000 times in simulation to show us that there is a 90% chance of completion between 45 to 60 days. Next up, let's look at hybrid modern techniques, starting with 3-point estimating. So 3-point estimating uses 3 scenarios. First one is optimistic scenario, so when everything goes right. Second one is most likely, so middle of the road or the average expectations. And the third one is pessimistic, so when everything that can go wrong goes wrong, what do our estimates look like would be covered by pessimistic scenario. Then we use PERT formula, so it goes like this. We add up estimates from optimistic scenario to 4 times the estimates of most likely scenario to the estimates from pessimistic scenario, and we divide the sum of these hours by 6 to get a weighted average. This formula ensures that we balance risk and improve accuracy. Let's take a specific example. Let's say our task estimates are like this. So our optimistic scenario gives us 2 days of estimates, more likely scenario is 4 days, and pessimistic scenario is 10 days. So if we add 2 to 4 times 4, which is 16, so 16 plus 2 is 18, and then we add 10 for the pessimistic scenario, so 18 plus 10 is 28, and then we divide 28 by 6 to give us 4.67 days as our final estimate. So it's slightly higher than our most likely estimate, but it is going to be a much more accurate estimate than just using most likely estimate. Next, we have story points, which is used in Agile methodology. Story points in Agile methodology estimate effort, complexity, and risk using relative scores like Fibonacci scale. For example, a team might assign 5 points to a feature like, say, login feature in website building project. Then we compare it to a simpler 2-point task like updating a web page text, which is really simple. Team discusses and agrees during planning poker session, and they track velocity to plan sprints. I know I'm throwing quite a lot of jargon here, but the idea is you take a bunch of tasks, you assign them scores, you build a consensus, and then you arrive at final estimate. Fibonacci sequence goes like this. So we start with values of 1, 1, then we add 1 to 1 to get a 2, then we add 2 to 1 to get a 3, we add 3 to 2 to get 5, and so on. The reason why you would give points from Fibonacci sequence instead of just using linear numbers is linear numbers can be misleading. When you give something a score of 1 and you give something else a score of 2, it tends to indicate that something that takes 2 is twice as harder as something that takes 1, while in reality that might not be true. To get rid of that precision bias, you use non-linear number series like a Fibonacci sequence. Then planning poker is quite simple. So let's say you put a task on the table and you ask everyone how much should that task take. So everyone writes their own numbers they would like to allocate for that task. Everyone reveals how many points they give all at once. If estimates match, you move on. If there is a lot of difference, so people who estimated lower have to explain why they did that. People who estimated higher, they have to explain. You build a consensus and arrive at a final estimate. Velocity is you're using your past experience from similar tasks. So story points blends qualitative judgment with quantitative tracking, making them a hybrid approach. Next up, we have timeboxing. Timeboxing allocates fixed time periods for agile tasks, focusing effort and maintaining sprint momentum, which is ideal for iterative projects, but it's rigid on time. So in simpler words, you set a time frame in which you are trying to accomplish the tasks that you have planned for. So for example, you set up a 2-week sprint to complete a set of features. If you dive deeper into it, how do you decide which tasks to complete in those 2 weeks, and how do you know that those tasks can be completed in 2 weeks, is all part of Agile methodology, which is a little beyond the scope of this video. For simplicity, assume that you only pick tasks and features that you know can be completed in 2 weeks based on your past experience, and you put all your attention and efforts into completing those in that time frame. Timeboxing prevents perfectionism, encourages focus, improves planning accuracy, boosts productivity, and supports iteration. So timeboxing helps you get more done with less burnout and better clarity. Lastly, we have work breakdown structure, or WBS for short. So WBS divides projects into smaller tasks for detailed effort estimation. It is foundational for planning, but it requires upfront decomposition effort. It is often paired with bottom-up approach for precision. Think of WBS like building a Lego set, so breaking the model into bricks, and bottom-up approach is like timing how long each brick takes to place and then totaling it up. So WBS is for breaking the work down, and bottom-up approach is to estimate from the ground up. So those are all the 12 estimation techniques I wanted to cover. I hope this infographic gave you a clear snapshot of 12 estimation techniques. If you found this walkthrough helpful, leave a like and share it with someone who presents project ideas or teaches these concepts. And if you are into PowerPoint to simplify complex topics, don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this. Keep creating, keep presenting, and I will see you in the next slide.